Moat on the volley, and back corner. What a start for West Bromwich Albion. Unbelievable! West Bromwich Albion have ruined his big day.
Line again, and it's Adam Wingy who gets the final touch, and West Bromwich Albion now have a 2-goal cushion.
The Baggies Podcast, giving you the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. Hello and welcome back to the Baggies Podcast, where of course we're giving you all the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. We're back again today to react to Saturday's away defeat to Luton Town, 2-0 at Kenilworth Road. We'll also be having a little bit of a preview ahead of Middlesbrough on Tuesday, which is away at the Riverside on Tuesday night. But before we get cracking, be sure to subscribe on your podcast platform or on YouTube, wherever you're listening from. And if you want to leave us a nice review, that would be very much appreciated if you're new around here and haven't listened to us before. But today I'm joined by Joe from the Albion Show podcast. Joe, how are you doing, mate? Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm going very good. Thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's great to have you back. I mean, last time was quite positive, I think, when you last joined me on the show. It was back in October. We'd just beaten. It was a match reaction to Birmingham, the Birmingham win at home. It was I suppose maybe not the prettiest win, but quite a celebratory win, certainly over I suppose a local rival. How have you sort of seen things since then, Joe? It's been a long sort of 5 months or so. How have you seen things going on at the Albion since then?
Well, I think it's been fair to say that we've gone downhill since then. I think we had the really good spell at the start of the season, and then we started to fall away after the Peterborough game, and then we kind of sort of got things back up, I think up till Coventry. Then after that, it's just been kind of a nightmare. I don't know what's happened in terms of the backroom staff with players, and maybe there's been disruption. Maybe Val lost the dressing room, but they clearly weren't playing for him at the end. It's not been the best of times. We have now got Steve Bruce, who, by all accounts, he's saying all the right things. He's doing what Ismail couldn't really do in terms of adapt his tactics. I know yesterday switched from 3-5-2 to the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-4-2, which is good, but it hasn't clicked for him so far. And yeah, we've not really had the best of times since that game.
Yeah, it's been quite worrying, to be honest. Obviously, Steve has come in and tried to sort of steady the ship, but it seems a bit of a case of same old story, really, with a lot of the things that obviously he's coming out and saying the right things, as you said after the game last night, which I'm sure we'll get on to what he said after that. He was pretty angry, to be honest, which I liked a bit. I quite like that he's willing to sort of tell the players exactly how it is. Have you sort of seen his reign progressing so far? Obviously, he's now 3 games in and not managed to pick up a victory.
Well, initially I thought after Sheffield United, up until the red card, I thought we were the better team. I thought we were actually trying to play some nice football, trying to kind of pass it around, which is kind of a contrast to what we did with Ishmael. His philosophy was kind of getting the ball up to the forwards quickly. But we're trying to play progressive football. Against Blackburn, I thought we actually played really well. I thought we were kind of really solid defensively. The only chances they really had were kind of the offside one, which was rightly given offside, as well as the Gallagher chance who slipped. But we had our own chances of our own with the reach header and the Clark goal, which was definitely offside. But that was really kind of a positive performance against a promotion rival. I don't know whether we're considered like promotion candidates at the moment. But I thought that was a really good performance. And then we've gone backwards really against Luton. I thought first half we were really good. I thought we should have had at least 2. I know on the stats website shows we missed 2 clear-cut chances, and I think one of them was Grant's in the first half when he hit the crossbar. And the other one may have been Carroll's or something, but I'm not sure. But yeah, hopefully there are signs that it will work and it can improve, but at the moment it's not looking good.
Yeah, it isn't. But yeah, that defeat was, Saturday was, a sight to behold. And I think we seem to find new low points of the season as we go through them. Some would say it was, Derby back in December. So, some might say, there were different low points of the season. Preston, Millwall were all collectively in there. And then now we're at Luton under a different manager, but with the same players producing, fairly similar results. So we'll start by talking a little bit about the lineup, which was, as you said, he showed a bit of adaptation and was able to change the formation, which I like about that. He went for a 3-5-2, which is a little bit different. And he went for obviously that 2 up front, which was, I suppose, what we thought that we all needed after that game against Blackburn, where we thought Andy Carroll might need some support. What did you make of the lineup? Only the one change in there though, Joe, with Bartley coming in for Robinson. How did you sort of see the lineup? Were you a bit more confident heading into the game after seeing it?
Well, initially I thought, it's 3 at the back. It's going to be very similar to Val Ball. We're just going to try and do what Val tried to do. But then we actually had the Carlin Grant and Andy Carroll up top, which, as you said, was definitely what was needed. I think Andy Carroll was really isolated against Blackburn. But I wasn't surprised to see Robertson dropped. I thought he had an all right game, especially second half against Blackburn. The first half, he didn't really do anything. But I was mainly kind of surprised he didn't go to a 4-4-2. I think that was kind of the logical way to do it, but I can understand why he's tried 3-5-2 in order to try and maybe counteract Luton's, who went with the 3-4-1-2, just trying to maybe kind of balance it out in the midfield. But yeah. Yeah,
it probably didn't work as well as we thought, really. It was another sort of dismal away performance, I think. That's the stat that I brought up, I think, in the last episode with Steve from The Athletic, and he honestly, his eyes popped out when I told him that, we haven't actually won away since Coventry back on the 4th of December it was. So that is a good couple of months since our last away victory. So what was your assessment, I suppose, overall of the game, Joe? How do you feel? Was it a just loss for us? Was it, a feeling that we should have lost that game, or would you think maybe we deserved a little bit more out of it?
I'm going to quote a football manager thing. I think one of the things you can do after the team talk is that was a real Jekyll Hyde performance. The first half, we were really good. We kind of had loads of shots on target. We were kind of creating chances. And as Bruce said, second half, we just fell away. It was unacceptable. I think that's what he described them as. But yeah, literally, I think we fell apart second half. We just lost our motive, our mojo. We just literally couldn't really be asked, I think it's kind of fair to say. We just gave away loose balls. And then Luton just piled on the pressure, and eventually they scored, which, I think we probably could have had. If we were 2-0 up in the first half, then we could have been, we would have won, I think, easily. I think we would have seen the game out. But we're low on confidence. Away form's been dreadful. As you said, we haven't won away since Coventry, and we are rubbish away. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, I think something needs to improve, and quickly.
Yeah, it's been a rough ride away from home, of course, and yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to highlight in today's episode. Obviously, I spoke a little bit about this. About the midfield three, because obviously we got a midfield three, which is something that we really haven't seen for quite some time under Ishmael. We played Malumbi, Reach, and Moat in there. Obviously, Livermore played in there until he went and got himself sent off and suspended. But obviously, I think a lot can see that they mostly are trying the best, but the quality in it is quite poor. The question I wanted to ask, Joe, do you think this is the poorest Albion midfield three or midfield sort of combination that you've seen in your lifetime?
I think it is definitely one of the worst. I don't know whether it is the worst, but it's definitely one of the worst. I think what we really lack in midfield is that sense of creativity. I think Moa on his day can provide creativity, but I think what Bruce is using him is kind of like a deep line playmaker. Reach has been really kind of ineffective, I think, in the past 3 games that Bruce has played him. But saying that, he's kind of the most able to pass the ball as well as Moa in that 3. I think Malumbi's kind of like a box-to-box kind of nippy midfielder, but we really miss kind of like that Pereira type of player. I think Pereira would really suit Bruce. And also, I think we were interested in Matt O'Reilly before into Celtic. I think he would have really slotted nicely into that midfield and kind of give us an extra bit of creativity up to Carroll and Grant, who could potentially finish the chances off that we haven't been able to do this season. Yeah, it's just the midfield. It's a bit too. I think Reach is really trying his best to sort of pull forwards, trying to slot balls through, but in reality, he's not really that sort of player. And I think Moat probably is. It has been that sort of player, but he's not playing in the role to sort of be given the freedom. And obviously, you got Malumbi, who I think, as you said, is not really set up. He's more of your sort of ball winning, gets around the pitch and just tries to get the ball back as often as possible. See, if we chat about the first goal now, it was a header from a free kick, and I think Cameron Jerome was left in a bundle of space really in there. I'm not really sure what happened, but yeah, it was Andy Carroll who gave away that free kick, which I think was probably he found himself almost chasing down the left back down the wing, which I thought was absolutely bizarre for
for the striker to be doing that. I think there certainly should be other players who can do that for him. But yeah, it was a poor goal to concede, wasn't it, Joe? There's not very much marking going on in there for Cameron Jerome's opener.
Yeah, I think that's I think we've been actually really good from defensively set pieces this season, but it's just kind of a lack of concentration. I don't know whether it's Carroll. I know he definitely gave away the free kick. I think it was really a necessary challenge, as you just said. There was no real kind of threat. I think Connor Townsend maybe could have come over and dealt with it, or one of the midfielders. But it was Carroll who was there, needless free kick to give away, and then we just switch off. Jerome is free in the box and head off, really, I think.
Yeah, it was
it's a really tough goal to concede, really. Like, we were in top of the game. I don't know whether against the run of play, but especially after the first half, it was against that kind of pressure that we put on the Luton. But yeah, I think it was a really soft goal to concede and really didn't set the mood for the afternoon.
Yeah, it was just the first half, as you said, there was chances in there for us, and there was obviously the Grant miss. I think we're probably going to have to mention, because I think that was quite a big one and was one that was circulating quite widely on Twitter afterwards. He's obviously gone to chip the goalkeeper from probably no more than six or so yards out, which I don't think I've seen many players do before. And then it's come back off the bar, and he's tried to have a little swing at it and reacted late to that. He's got to put that one away, hasn't he, Joe? It's one of those that you score that, and all of your problems really start to sort of disintegrate, and you start to gain a bit more confidence. But at the moment, that was just a miss that was sort of telling of our sort of season so far, really.
Yeah, I think as you said, it's like the story of our season. We create the opportunities, but we just can't finish them off. I think, especially after he hit the bar, his reaction to kind of anticipate the rebound wasn't really there. I know I didn't really watch the game, but I listened to it on Albion radio, and then I saw the video he's talking about on Twitter, and he just stood there. He kicked the goalkeeper, and he just kind of was going to run away to potentially celebrate, but he didn't, and then he just had to come back. And yeah, it was a bad miss. It was he really should be scoring that and putting us 1-0 up, which would really have done our confidence a load of good. But it wasn't meant to be, and I think the whole team's low on confidence at the minute. I think Carroll is probably the biggest player that we can rely on in terms of confidence and ability to score the goals, because Grant's clearly not doing it at the moment, and I can't really see anyone else who will, apart from DK when he potentially gets back from injury, because he looked bright against Peterborough. Yeah,
I think DK is going to be, the DK Carroll strike partnership, if that ends up being the case. I think Carroll could probably be one of the only players that we could potentially pick up that can make Daryl DK look like a sort of more nimble striker. I think that would be an amazing sight to see. Is that a strike partnership you think that you might be interested in seeing if and when Daryl DK comes back from injury?
Yeah, I could definitely kind of see that working as well. I think you've got potentially kind of both of them have got quite tall, especially compared to kind of some other strikers that we've got like Grant. So when you've got kind of the really big man and the big man, it's kind of, you can use the height of them, like flick on, and then you got the pace and power of DK to kind of finish the chances off, which is really what we need to do. Because I think I don't know what the XG we created was. It was 1.6 expected goals against Luton compared to their 0.79. So if we can literally get Daryl DK and Andy Carroll up front, I reckon maybe the chances that we missed, DK scores.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I think that's definitely the plan. And that is I'm looking forward to seeing that strike partnership in action if it does happen. But yeah, I suppose the second half is probably the biggest elephant in the room. I think the best way I can probably describe it was fairly dreadful, a bit gutless from a lot of the players. I think, to almost just down tools in the second half, and especially when that first goal went in. The reaction was just not good enough. And I do feel for a lot of those away fans who travelled all the way to, well, I say all the way, it's not the biggest journey you could make on an away day, but still a sizable one to Luton, and paid all that money to go and watch them, and to just watch a team just completely down tools like that. And yeah, rightly so. Steve Bruce was quite literally red-faced. I think he dropped a few swear words in his post-match press conference with the press. The second half was really not good enough, Joe, was it? It was just not what you want to see at all, especially as a travelling fan. If you go and watch that away from home, that's not performance you pay to see in the second half.
Yeah, I know we've kind of sold out quite a few of our away-ins recently. I don't know whether it was Derby. I think we sold out, but especially Luton. We really, the players really don't know kind of how much. I don't know whether they do know but the fans sacrifice a lot to go and watch their team play on a Saturday afternoon, and to put in that kind of performance on a Saturday lunchtime, it's not really kind of acceptable. I think Bruce alluded to that in his press conference, but I think it turned to quite a toxic atmosphere. I think it was very similar to Millwall. I was listening to the phone on WM, and apparently quite a few people were chatting, "You're not fit to wear the shirt." So I don't know whether it's justified yet. If we lose like another maybe 2 games, then I reckon that if those chances start at home, I think then that could be a real issue for the players and the confidence, because we don't really need this at the moment. Because low on confidence means low performance, and like really bad performances, and those don't return into results really. So we need to get behind the boys and encourage them as much as we can, but I can't really see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, you said there, if that starts happening at home, you start to get quite worried, because you're almost just sort of backtracking into how it was under Ismail, maybe just chanting at a different group of people this time. Obviously, the Preston game at home was one that, I don't think I've ever seen, that bad in my lifetime, when the whole ground seems to be turning on a manager, leaving the stadium and stuff like that. You do fear for what could happen. And I do feel a little bit for Bruce, because, he's walked in, and I think like Allardyce, he's come in and he's realised what sort of a job he's got on his hands here, because he's got a group of players that clearly are falling away and haven't got the confidence to turn themselves around. And although Bruce is supposedly meant to be quite a confidence-filling manager, he's got a massive job on his hands, hasn't he, Joe, to kind of give these guys confidence and to turn the form around, really.
Yeah, he's definitely got a huge job. I think it's probably one of the, I don't know if it's one of the biggest jobs he's ever taken, but probably one of the toughest in terms of like the dressing room. But I think what Bruce had compared to what Big Sam actually had a transfer window under his belt to try and get the players that he wanted in, because his recruitment, Big Sam, by the way, is unbelievable. He signed Yakushlu, Dianya, and Maitland-Niles all in January, and those were key players for the second half of the season. They brought us some vital points, which ultimately didn't end up kind of getting us survival, but it definitely improved our chances, I'd say. But yeah, unfortunately for Bruce, he didn't get that transfer window. I think we could have sacked Val maybe 2 games earlier. That may have given us time to get Bruce in, giving him maybe a week or so just to get his players in. But yeah, I think that's a real disadvantage is what Bruce had, and I think it may be very difficult because he hasn't got his players in to get his kind of style of football across to what he thinks.
Yeah, I think Allardyce's transfer window can't really be underestimated. Those players that he bought in turned us into a competing Premier League side rather than a side that was just sort of rolling over every game. And Allardyce, I think lots of us would have loved to have seen him stay on, but see, he definitely wasn't up for that. I think he knew the size of the challenge ahead. But as you said, you echo the thoughts of Steve last week, who said, if only we'd have sacked Ismail a couple of games earlier to give Bruce, number one, some better fixtures to start with, because Sheffield United, Blackburn and Luton at the moment, who are all in reasonable form, aren't nice places to start your managerial career at Albion off with. If you'd have sacked him a few games earlier, you may have started with a Peterborough, Millwall, Preston. They're all games that on a normal day that you could come in and pick up a victory. But yeah, I think they'll learn that they're going to have to learn that mistake, because that's a huge chunk of games gone now that they've sort of let slide, and Bruce has got a real uphill battle now, because he's just faced some of the better form sides in the league. Sheffield United now in the playoffs, Blackburn still up and around the automatic promotion spots. They're horrible games to come into, aren't they, Joe? You look at the sort of caliber of side you're coming into. Luton is a difficult away game to face. You just hope that you wish that maybe he'd have had a bit of extra time, not just for the transfer window, but also for a bit of more confidence boosting games to come into.
Yeah, I think if he had the Sheffield United, the Peterborough and Preston games, I think you could potentially get that new manager bounce, because Peterborough, who have not been in very good form this season, are in the relegation zone, just lost to Derby. So if he had those 2 games, I think he may have got a result against Preston. Even they lost to, was it Reading? I think it was yesterday. Yeah. So if he had those 2 games, we had won those, we would have brought real confidence into Sheffield United, believing that we've got a couple of games with the style of football, the new formation, the new kind of philosophy that Bruce wants to implement, have that ready for the Sheffield United game. We also have a new manager as well. We can't forget that Sheffield United are probably in the position that we were now earlier in the season, because they had Jukanovic, who he got the mid-table. He was playing some good stuff. It just wasn't working for him. So he got like Heckingbottom's come in. He's done really well. He's got him up into the playoff positions now. I think they're in 6th. So it's going to be, it's like really a tale of a kind of as a Jekyll Hyde thing. So, earlier in the season we played quite well, and the second half of the season we may potentially fall off. Hopefully we can recoup it in the next kind of how many games are left. I think it was 14 or something like that. But I know I was listening to WL on yesterday. Apparently need 72 points for the playoffs, and we've got 14 games left. We need to win 9 of those. Can we realistically win 9 of the 14? I'm not sure, considering the confidence at the moment. So yeah,
it's difficult, isn't it? There's a lot of points to make up, if you want to get into those positions, and you just look at the teams around you. I'd say that several of them, probably in personnel and previous history in the Championship, probably aren't better than the side that we've got, but they've certainly got the drive and the organisation and that sort of stuff to take them forwards. And I think Jekyll and Hyde may have to be the title of the episode here, Joe. I think you mentioned it a couple of times there. It's so telling of what we saw yesterday in particular, but also the whole season. One thing I wanted to chat about, Joe, is sort of the calibre of player that we've got at the club at the moment. I think, the players are probably decent Championship level, but realistically, if I talk you through this list and, the list of teams that we bought the starting 11 yesterday from, it's quite a ridiculous stat, to be honest. You've got in goal, you've got Johnston from Man United, you've got a back 3 of players from Swansea, Rotherham, on loan from Brighton, of course, with Matt Clark. Your wing backs are from QPR and Scunthorpe. You've got a midfield 3 of Barnsley, Sheffield Wednesday. Those being their last clubs anyway, and on loan from Brighton again, and then a front 2 of players that their last clubs were Reading and Huddersfield. So, only 3 teams were in the top flight, those being Man United and, of course, the 2 signings from Brighton that were in the top tier when we bought them. It's a ridiculous record, Joe. Do you think recruitment's something that needs to be sort of looked at in the summer, and maybe a bit of a clear out maybe needed?
Yeah, definitely. I think the recruitment has gone downhill ever since Dan Ashworth left. I think we haven't really had that kind of director of football. I think is kind of one of the models that they use. I know Luke Dowling tried to do it for a couple of years. His signings didn't really work out. That's why he eventually left. But yeah, as you say, we're kind of recruiting Championship quality players. What we need is Championship quality, like really high quality Championship players who can make a step up to the Prem. I think DK's one of them. I think he has the potential to get there. I think we have also picked up some bargains. Like you look at Townsend from Scunthorpe. I know he only came from Scunthorpe, but he has definitely really progressed as a player over his 4 years at the club, as well as kind of Ajayi as well from Rotherham, who has played in the Premier League, played well in the Premier League. I could definitely see him, because I know he's played quite well under Bruce. He didn't really get a chance under Ismail, but I reckon he could definitely get a Premier League move in the summer if we don't go up, which is looking highly likely at the moment. We definitely need to have a really real clear out of all the deadwood. I think some of the more kind of aging, experienced players, maybe a couple of them could stay, but we need to have really kind of a whole clear out and making sure that we have a new kind of transfer philosophy of trying to get. So I don't know. I really like what Brentford and Barnsley do. I think I watched a video of them, kind of the Moneyball strategy is where they look at the statistics and kind of how they get, or how many goals they get, or how many headers they win, or like how many times touches are in the box, or that sort of model is something that we could really use.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's nothing wrong with signing players from lower divisions. Some of them, as you said, Townsend, Ajayi, really made that step up quite well. But then if your whole team is filled with players that are yet to touch Premier League soil, it's quite, it's never going to lead to a good result. And that proves that they're not going to. If you do go up, you'd have to sort of buy more players like Allardyce did and bring more players in to sort of fill those gaps for you. But yeah, recruitment is not the best at the moment, and I hope that Brentford and Barnsley are a fantastic example. Brentford have got, obviously they're affiliated with one of the Danish clubs, which makes them a bit, that means they can sort of go and poach players over there, and some of them are playing Premier League football and playing it well to to this date. So there's so many teams that you could look at, and Brighton as well are probably, obviously they've got Dan Ashworth, which is probably the man that a lot of Albion fans wish was still in the frame. But there's definite need for some restructuring in terms of recruitment and transfers in the summer, and hopefully a bit of a clear out of some of the players that have not been performing. But Joe, not too long till our next game, unfortunately. Only a couple of days away. Middlesbrough away at the Riverside. They're doing really well under Chris Wilder. I know they lost yesterday, but a manager that we turned down in the summer. Do you think there are some maybe regrets from the club hierarchy for maybe not taking on Wilder when they had the chance?
Yeah, I think I read the interview with Allardyce. I think he kind of recommended Chris Wilder for the job, but kind of turned him down because of his relationship with Sheffield United owners. But on paper, Wilder was the clear choice, really. He's got the experience, he's got the know-how, he has everything, really. I think compared to Val, who we had to pay compensation for, we wouldn't have to pay anything for Chris Wilder apart from his wages. But he had one season in the Championship, one all right season with Barnsley. But it was a big risk we took with Val. I can see why we took the risk, but in hindsight, we should have gone with the safe option with Chris Wilder. But yeah, he's doing really well at Middlesbrough, and I think it's going to be a very tough place to go. It's always been a tough place for us, really. I think, last time in the Championship, we only won 1-0 thanks to a Robson Carney goal. So yeah, it's going to be a tough place, but who knows? Really, it's the Albion. We can never really expect anything.
Yeah, we just don't know what to expect, really. You hope that. Are there any changes, really, Joe, that you'd like to see in the lineup? Because Steve Bruce did sort of hint at the fact that there needs to be change. Maybe I've seen loads of people obviously throwing out the play the kids statement, which maybe is probably a bit overkill if you want to play 11 under 23 players. That's probably not the best thing to do, but certainly there might be some scope to drop a few of the younger lads into the lineup, maybe for Middlesbrough.
Yeah, I think we can definitely potentially see kind of Gardner Hickman coming into the squad, maybe even some of the youngsters like Castro, potentially Cleary. I think is one of the players that the fans would really like to see get a chance in the first team, considering we're not really scoring many goals. So they could be players who come in. I reckon we might switch formation as well. Potentially, I think we could stick with 3-5-2, but we may look to go 4-4-2 in terms of kind of trying to get the ball up to Cowell and play off him. Because the three at the back, it did do us well in the first half, but then, yeah, I think after the first goal, we tried to switch it up a little bit. And I think Bruce doesn't know yet what his best formation is and what his best squad is. So it'll be really interesting to see which kind of starting 11 he chooses in Middlesbrough. Yeah,
I think it's definitely going to be interesting. I'd like to see O'Shea maybe come back into the team. I don't know necessarily who he replaces because, obviously I can't really lie blame at any of really the defence's door for. Obviously, I don't think they particularly worked well in that second half, but I think they weren't helped by the lack of sort of protection and stuff in front of them. It's be harsh to drop. I think any of the three, I don't think any of them have been particularly bad at all. But, I would like to see O'Shea maybe come back and get a game. Gardner Hickman, I think, has to play maybe I'd love to see him back in the midfield. And then Cleary's a good option, I think. Maybe Castro as well. As you said there are some young players who I think I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't think it's right to overhaul the squad and bring, do what we did against Arsenal and just play the under 23s. But I'd like to see some dotted in there, maybe just to give us something a bit different. I think we're all a bit bored and tired of seeing sort of the same players turn out the same performances. It might be nice to see some younger, fresher faces who we know that are going to give 100%. May not be as adapted to the professional game yet, but might be nice to see some different faces in the side. So yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I'd love to see some of those in. Are there any Middlesbrough players that sort of stick out for you, Joe? Because they've got. I've watched them against Man United. They certainly know how to organise themselves against a side that against Man United who are obviously a lot better in personnel than them. But they certainly gave them a game, and eventually their plan worked, and they won on penalties. Are there any players that you'd like to sort of stick out and as ones to watch in this one?
Well, I think they've got definitely quite a few players who I'll definitely have in our Albion squad that could make a difference. I think the striker Sporar on loan for Sporting Lisbon, I think he is a really, really kind of top striker for this level who could definitely cause us problems. Matt Crooks as well. He caused Man United problems, and he will definitely be a threat. I think I can't remember what his name was. I think he's the right wing back, but I think he I can't remember what his name is, but
is it Joe? Isaiah Jones, is that the one?
Yeah, him. Yeah, I think I remember watching him on like the open day of the season against Fulham when they drew, and I think he really impressed, and he's been impressed throughout the season. I think, those are kind of the key players. I reckon that might cause us problems, but hopefully we'll be able to counteract that with whatever Bruce has in his mind.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some decent ones in there, and the fact that Jed Spence, who's another player who's actually on their books, they had the sort of the squad quality to loan him out to Nottingham Forest as well. The fact that he was actually on their books at the start of the season and they decided to give him away is ridiculous. So yeah, I think we may be in for another tough one, but it's another away game. Obviously, as I said, we haven't won since December. We're now 1 win in 11 in the league, so it's really worrying times, Joe. Is there any way you can see Albion picking up a victory on Tuesday?
It's going to be very, very tough. I reckon there's a slight possibility we could get a victory if we absolutely work our socks off and just literally put in the performance of our lives against Middlesbrough. But I reckon a draw might be a realistic result, the best result we can hope for, really. But I wouldn't be surprised if we lose, considering the kind of the strength that Middlesbrough have and the low on confidence that we are and the high on confidence Middlesbrough are. I know they've just gone on the back of a loss, but it's football, early championship. Anyone can beat anyone. Yeah, it's mad the way that the championship works, but it's going to be a difficult one. Do you have a score prediction for us, Joe, quickly? I'm going to say 1-1.
1-1.
Yeah, I reckon that might be kind of the best result we can hope for.
Well, I'm going to go for 0-0. I think you're brave picking us to score, to be honest, Joe. I think that's a brave prediction, but yeah, I think it's definitely. I can't see us picking up a win, but I think a draw away from home now looks quite creditable, really, against a side that are really strong at the moment. But yeah, Joe, that's all we've got time for on this episode. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for coming back on. Do you want to just plug your Twitter, maybe the podcast as well, as to what you've been doing recently?
So yeah, my Twitter is @football_Joey. Give that a follow. I haven't been really doing the Albion Show recently, but I will get back on it after, because I've got A-levels and everything at the moment. But I'm determined to get that back up and running soon. Yeah, give that a follow at the Albion Show on Twitter and on Spotify or whatever you use.
Yeah,
thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure, Joe. Pleasure as always. We'll drop some links in the description for those couple of things. So yeah, be sure to drop Joe a follow on both of those and to go and check out the podcast. Looking forward to seeing some more episodes on there soon. But that's all we've got time for on today's show. Thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you drop us a nice little subscription or maybe a nice 5-star rating. That would be just as lovely. But yeah, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Baggies Podcast. We'll be back again next week to react to the next week of Albion games. So yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
See ya.